Damian Mason joining us on the program right now. DamianMason.com is the website. Damian, thank you for your time, sir.
Hello, Cam. Thank you for having me on with you, Cam and company, and I assume I'm the company.
You are the company this segment, absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. It was interesting. We saw your article, What Agriculture Can Learn from the NRA. We kind of kicked it around a couple of days ago on the show, so I really do appreciate you coming here. So you are an NRA member, are you not?
I'm an NRA member the last several years. I've been a hunter, a gun guy since I was a kid, and I get the solicitations, and I guess it, honest to God, took Obama being elected to push me over the hump to send $35 in per year.
Well, listen, I appreciate you doing so. Now we got to get you to an NRA annual meeting next year, perhaps in Louisville, Kentucky.
I would probably absolutely do that. I'm from Indiana. I live between a farm in northeastern Indiana, which is only a 3.5 hours drive from Louisville, and then I also live part-time in Phoenix, where I'm calling you from today. You might notice that I take my residence to 2 gun-friendly states, and I am going to be an NRA member from here on. Like I said, it was never that I had a problem with them. It was just that I never really was as compelled, and by golly, you and I both know what happened. By the way, I was listening to your show, the Ricky Gervais thing, and I had to Google it. I didn't know what was all about that. He's a comedy guy. I'm a comedy background guy. That's how I got in this line of work of professional speaking and talking, which is what I do to earn a living for 21 years now. Ricky Gervais taking a picture with tofu. First off, does he just then going to also then take a picture of his balls and say, yeah, they're in a jar now, I don't have any, I'm a tofu eater? I mean, for crying out loud, I don't get that. So you'll never see a picture with me and the tofu. That's remarkable. But why he's deciding to go after some woman with a giraffe, that's kind of beyond me.
I think it's a case of look at meism, honestly, Damian. You know, I mean, but. As I said, Ricky Gervais doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, and that's part. I think that's a real issue here. Is just ignorance of an issue does not stop someone from having a vehement opinion and being absolutely sure that they're correct on this. But listen,
which is exactly what this article is about that you're talking about. We've got. I just was talking with a friend of mine on a hike. He's a gun guy, and I'm a gun guy, and he said, "Isn't it remarkable that we live in a country where everybody has the right to bear arms, but not one person has ever really had during their growing up, unless their parents, their dad, somebody like you or I did it, nobody at school said, hey, these things are everywhere. Let's actually learn how to use them. Let's go ahead and have a .22 rifle, break it down, show you how to load it, show you how to shoot it. Nobody knows how guns work. I love the media. Every time there's a story that there's always a gun that just magically goes off. I think these people live in fear that guns just walk around and then just go off. You know how guns go off, Cam, and I know how guns go off, but the average American thinks they just go off. You and I know that when guns go off, it's because somebody pulled the trigger.
No, absolutely. I mean, there is, and I think, these days we've seen, frankly, the media and anti-gun figures go out and say stuff that they know isn't true, in a effort to try to advance their argument. Today, the police chief in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is talking about how career criminals are going out and getting concealed carry licenses, which is just simply absurd. And I think that the chief probably knows that that's absurd, but doesn't really matter at this point. And so, the NRA is there to sort of counter the lies and the misinformation and the ignorance that's out there. And you say that that's needed for farmers.
Yeah, I saw I looked you up. You're a farm guy. You've got your acreage there in Virginia.
Yes, sir.
You got some cattle. You got some pork. I'm a farm guy. Most people that are in agriculture, I mean, basically almost everybody that's in agriculture is from it. We're from around it. We grew up down the road from it or raised amongst it. It's a bit like the gun thing in this regard, in that if you have a background with firearms because it was passed down to you, that's the way it is with agriculture, although I do understand that more people are starting to reach out on the firearm thing because they feel that right is being taken away from them. On the business of agriculture, what food production always gets wrong is, first off, as I said in that article, we're as outnumbered as the NRA. There's 3.2 million farms in the United States, and only 40 or 50% of them actually sell more than $10,000 of agricultural product per year. So you're talking about a really small number of people that produce all the food in this country, completely maligned, huge amount of detractors that are well-funded. Just like the anti-gun crowd, we have the anti-ag crowd. Humane Society, PETA, Environmental Working Group, and they are well-funded, Washington-based organizations that what we need to do in agriculture is we need to try and tell the average citizen, listen, these people aren't against us, they're against you having a choice. They want you to not have a bacon and eggs breakfast. They want you to not have leather boots. They want you to not have a wool sweater. We in agriculture think we're fighting them by just saying, well, we're working really hard to produce safe food. Phooey. The average American needs to realize that the Humane Society, PETA, Environmental Working Group, is trying to remove their rights, and that's what NRA does so well. The National Rifle Association says, you know what? You want to take your son hunting on Thanksgiving, just like your dad took you and his dad took him. And these people that want there to be no guns want to remove that right from you.
Talking with Damian Mason about the attack on ag, and so let me ask you, Damian, because one of the things within the gun ownership world is that you've got a lot of gun owners who aren't NRA members. You talked about your own experience. It takes some time. Somebody's saying, "Whoa, okay, now I know why the NRA is around." So not only do you have, I think, a smaller pool of farmers than gun owners in this country, but you also have, I think, a couple of things that are working against the idea of this big organization being able to start. Because farmers are busy. Most farmers are also, they've got some off-farm income. They've got off-farm employment that they're working. There's the apathy factor that comes into play where people say, oh, it's not that bad. How do you rally these farmers around the idea that, look, your way of life is under attack, your way of life is going away if we don't fight for it?
What you're talking about, Kim, is the Freerider Phenomenon, as it's discussed in economics, 202 or whatever, where they will gladly let you fight the battle for them as long as it's good for them, and they will not join in. And gun ownership issues have that. I was glad to join the NRA. I will always be now a member of the NRA, as are you, and we will take up that battle for others that are not members. On agricultural fronts, I try to tell my audiences when I do speeches for agricultural groups, I'm like, you need to realize, because they think that it's just a fringe group that kind of is opposed to eating meat. And I'm like, no. It's a fringe group that wants to remove the choice for the consumer and wants to put you out of business. They don't want humane treatment of animals. They don't want ethical treatment of animals. They want there to be no animals. And that's a hard message, Cam, as you point out. So I bring it to, just like the arguments I think that NRA does such an effective job with, of using emotion versus science and not using, with my crowd, I'm like, your great-grandfather cleared this land. Your father worked out here. When you got home from school, you ran down that fence row and got on that tractor. And you're all about protecting it, and you're all about working for it. But you won't fight this one battle against these fringe groups that want to put you out of business. That's the thing that we need to let our people know. They don't want there to be no meat on their plate. They want there to be no meat on anybody's plate, and they want there to be no meat producers.
And, Damian, I would say, and so it's interesting because I did not grow up in a farming family. I grew up in the burbs. And lived my entire life basically either in the burbs or in the inner ring of a city, but I saw this way of life disappearing, and I kind of wanted to experience it before it disappeared, and I don't want it to disappear. And I think that
it's never going to disappear, Cam. There's always going to be a need for food. It's just the choice in what food we are allowed to have should not be dictated by a well-funded small minority of radicals.
Well, I would agree, but I also think that the traditional agricultural way of life, it is sort of in danger of disappearing. When you've got folks saying, "Hey, you know what? We don't need farms because it's so much greener if we can just grow our meat in tubes." one day. We don't need cows, right? We can just have meat cells. The urban farming. I love the idea that farming is accessible to all, but I want it to remain accessible to rural America.
Well, we're glad to have you out there, by the way, and you have a hobby beef operation, which, let's face it, I mean, it's
oh no.
not,
Well, first of all, I got to say the cows in the picture are not my own; they are my neighbors. But we have an arrangement where I get to look at the cows and they get to graze in my pasture. So
you know what? That's maybe a better arrangement because he's got the investment. You get a butcher one once in a while. That's even better then.
Exactly. No, and that's the thing. I mean, when you're doing this, one of the things that I've learned is that there's really no better steward of the animals. There's really no better steward of your local environment than the people who are on that land. It just amazes me. It's sort of the Ricky Gervais factor, where you have people who are not involved in hunting. They don't like hunting. They don't really know the first thing about it, but they have their own very adamant opinion. You have people who are not connected to this, to their food in any shape or form.
I had somebody ask me once that said, how can you stand to butcher an animal after you've raised it? And I said, how can you aid an animal that you have no idea what went into it? I said, I appreciate that. What you're talking about, Cam, is hunters tend to be stewards of the land and appreciate those wild animals and that habitat so much more than the average person. It's a good friend of mine and I had a discussion once that the kids today are being taught in a very sort of, let's face it, there's a liberal agenda in some regards that says we must protect, oh, you should, and they really don't have any appreciation for what it is they're allegedly protecting, Cam. They have not gone out and sat in the woods and watched that deer because their whole involvement is they play video games and see something on TV. Same thing with farming. I don't want to see an animal suffer, and that's why if you're organic, that's fine. But remember, because the people are so they're just so far removed from it that they don't understand. If you showed them a sick calf, and then they said, what are you going to do about that sick calf? And you say, well, nothing, because you're for organic food production, right? So I'm just going to let it sit there and suffer. That's why there has to be some common sense on this thing, and you and I both know that's really a hard battle to fight. The battle for common sense on guns, on food production, on anything.
Absolutely, but you're right. I mean, that is, I think, the big battle space right now, Damian. And listen, I thought it was a very thought-provoking article that you wrote. I really do appreciate you coming on the program. And next time you get out this way, let us know. Love to talk to you again.
Cam, I would love to come on your show. We can talk food production. We can talk gun ownership. We can talk anything in between. I appreciate you having me on there, and I appreciate you fighting the good fight. Tell your listeners, DamianMason.com. That's Damian, D-A-M-I-A-N, Mason like a bricklayer.com. I'd love to hear from them, but thanks for making me part of this.
Hey, absolutely, Damian. Thank you, sir, for being part of the company today. We'll talk soon. Damian Mason joining us here on NRA News, Cam & Company. DamianMason.com is the website.